Last time, we talked about the quiet habits that make people respect you without you saying a word. Today we're going one layer deeper into why some minds just won't let go of things, and why others have stopped needing anyone to notice them at all. Ever had a random exchange from years ago just show up in your head at 2 a.m., uninvited? Not a big fight. Not something dramatic. Just a moment. And you replay it, again and again, while the other person involved probably couldn't even tell you it happened. That gap right there, that's the thing worth understanding. Here's what's actually going on. Your brain isn't obsessed with every conversation you've ever had. It's obsessed with the ones that never got a proper ending. Picture reading a book and the last chapter is just missing, torn out, gone. You wouldn't stop wondering how it ends. Your mind treats certain conversations exactly the same way. Someone's tone shifted mid-sentence. A reply never came. A look flashed across someone's face that you couldn't quite read. Your brain quietly files that away as incomplete, and incomplete things don't get archived. They get replayed. This is where something called the need for closure comes in, and it's stronger than most people realize. Your brain genuinely can't stand not knowing. Given the choice between an uncomfortable truth and an unresolved mystery, it'll often manufacture 5 different explanations rather than just sit in uncertainty. That's the actual reason a throwaway 5-minute conversation can camp out in your head for half a year. Not because it mattered that much. Because it never got closed, and here's where it gets stranger. Every time you replay it, you're not pulling up a recording. You're rebuilding it. Memory doesn't work like video playback, it's reconstruction, built fresh each time out of whatever you're currently feeling. So a neutral expression slowly turns colder in your memory. A short pause stretches longer than it actually was. Eventually you're not remembering what happened anymore, you're remembering the emotional story your brain wrote about what happened. Which is exactly why 2 people can walk out of the identical conversation and describe 2 completely different events. So why do some people get stuck in this loop for weeks while others shrug it off in an hour? It comes down to how much emotional data someone's brain collects without even trying. If you're the type who notices a half-second hesitation before someone answers, or a barely there shift in expression, you're not imagining things. You're just collecting more raw material than most people do, which means there's simply more for your mind to sit with later. But here's the part almost nobody figures out on their own: the conversation was rarely ever the actual problem. What kept you stuck was the emotion it woke up. Maybe it brushed against an old fear of being rejected. Maybe it poked at an insecurity you thought you'd dealt with already. That's why identical words can hit 2 people completely differently. One forgets it by dinner, the other's still thinking about it a year later. It was never really about what was said. It was about what it touched. So the fix isn't hunting for the perfect comeback you wish you'd said. That question, what should I have said, just keeps the loop spinning. The better question is, what was this actually trying to show me? Maybe a boundary that needed setting. Maybe proof that not every misunderstanding is yours to untangle. The second you stop chasing the perfect response and start chasing the lesson instead, the grip finally loosens. Now here's where these 2 ideas connect. This constant hunger for closure, for knowing exactly where you stand with someone, usually traces back to something bigger: how much a person needs to be seen and confirmed by others in the first place. Which brings us to a completely different kind of person. The ones who've quietly stopped needing an audience at all. We've all met someone who just doesn't post. No updates, no selfies, no running commentary on their life. Most people chalk it up to shyness or privacy. But there's a psychological mechanism underneath that's way more interesting. First, they've clocked that attention isn't free. Every scroll, every notification check pulls a sliver of focus away from wherever you actually are. Most people never notice this happening because it happens in tiny increments, all day long. But the quiet ones have generally figured out that attention is a currency, and they'd rather spend it on the actual moment than rent it out to an audience second they've stepped outside the validation loop. Here's something researchers have actually tracked: your brain's reward system doesn't just fire from getting praise, it fires from anticipating it. That's the real reason people check their phone 30 seconds after posting something. They're not looking for new information, they're chasing a dopamine hit. The people who've stopped posting have, at some point, exited that loop, sometimes deliberately, sometimes just because the craving faded on its own. Third, they're not performing calmly, they're actually living it. There's a real gap between looking peaceful online and being peaceful in your actual life. Plenty of people post the curated version of the sunset photo, the grateful caption, while still quietly starving for approval underneath it. The quiet ones skipped that performance entirely. Whatever peace they've got, it was never built for an audience to see, and here's where this whole thing flips: it was never really about social media at all. It's about where someone's sense of worth actually lives. Loud or quiet, posting or not, the real question underneath everything is the same one: does this person need to be witnessed to feel real, or did they already answer that for themselves a long time ago? Fourth, they've made peace with being misread. This one's uncomfortable but true. Staying quiet means people fill in the blanks about who you are, and sometimes they get it wrong. Shy. Distant. Maybe even arrogant. The truly settled version of this person has already accepted that trade. They'd rather be slightly misunderstood by strangers than fully understood through some curated highlight reel of themselves. So maybe the real question was never why don't they post. Maybe it's this that would change for the rest of us if we simply stopped needing to be calm instead of loud. Closure you give yourself instead of chasing it from someone else. Peace that was never built to be witnessed. Different habits, same root: people who've stopped needing to prove, perform, or be seen in order to already know they're enough. If this makes you rethink how you show up with other people, with your own mind, with the world, subscribe to mine Decoded. Because here, we don't just watch people. We decode them.